My husband sat on our bed and said, "Your best friend is pregnant." Then he added, "The baby might be mine." I thought that was the worst part, until he asked me to lie to her husband. I refused. A week later, her husband invited all four of us to dinner. Curtis came into our bedroom after I was already in bed and closed the door behind him. He just stood there. I looked up. What happened? He rubbed both hands over his face. "Kendra's pregnant." For about 2 seconds, I smiled. Kendra had been my best friend for years. Her husband, Ross, had talked before about wanting children, so I assumed Curtis was telling me good news. Seriously? Curtis didn't smile. That was when I knew something was wrong. I put my phone down. What? He sat on the edge of the bed. "There's a chance the baby is mine." I stared at him. The sentence didn't make sense at first. Then it did. I got out of bed. "What did you just say?" "Valerie." "Say it again." He looked at the floor. "Kendra and I have been seeing each other." Seeing each other. Such a harmless phrase for something that instantly changed the last year of my life. "How long?" He hesitated. "About 9 months." I laughed once. Not because it was funny. Because 9 months was so far beyond the word mistake that I didn't know what else to do. Curtis started explaining. "It began after one of the dinners the four of us used to have together. Ross had gone home early. Kendra stayed longer. I had gone upstairs because I wasn't feeling well. Curtis said they talked. Then something happened. He called it a mistake. I asked once. He went quiet. Was it once? No. How many times? I don't know. You don't know. It happened off and on. For 9 months. Yes. Every boring excuse I had accepted suddenly came back to me. Running late. Picking something up. Helping someone. Stopping somewhere before coming home. Nothing dramatic enough to question. That was probably why it worked. And Kendra had been in my house during those months. She had sat at my kitchen table. She had complained about Ross. She had asked about my marriage. She had hugged me on my birthday. Once, she had even told me I was lucky because Curtis seemed so dependable. I looked at him. "Does Ross know?" "No." "Does Kendra know you're telling me?" A pause. "Yes." That somehow hurt more. "You talked about this before you came upstairs?" "She knows we can't keep doing this." "You discussed what you were going to tell me?" "We're trying to figure out what happens next." "We." His face changed. He knew immediately. I folded my arms. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" He told me Kendra had found out she was pregnant 2 weeks earlier. 2 weeks. She had spoken to me during those 2 weeks as if nothing had happened. Curtis had slept beside me, and the two of them had apparently spent that time discussing whether the baby belonged to Curtis or Ross. I asked, "Does she know who the father is?" "No." "She's been with Ross too?" Curtis nodded. Of course she had. Ross was her husband. Curtis said Kendra wanted private prenatal testing so they could establish paternity. She had already told Ross about the pregnancy. Ross was thrilled. That was the first moment I stopped thinking only about myself. Ross had no idea. He was probably imagining names, telling himself he was about to become a father, while 3 other adults knew there was a question hanging over the pregnancy. I said, "So you're telling him?" Curtis looked at me. "Not yet." I stared at him. "Why?" "Kendra wants to wait until she knows." "What do you want?" "I think we should wait too." I felt something inside me go cold. "If the baby is Ross's," he continued, "telling him now could destroy everything for no reason." For no reason? That came out wrong. No. I think it came out exactly right. He stood up. "I'm not saying what we did doesn't matter. What you did." He looked away. I said, "Finish explaining." "Ross wanted to tell their families about the pregnancy. Kendra wanted him to wait. She had already told Ross that she'd confided in me because she was nervous about announcing too early. Now she wanted me to support that story. If Ross mentioned the pregnancy, I was supposed to tell him Kendra had asked for privacy. Just until they got the test. Just until they knew." I stared at my husband. "You want me to help you lie to him?" "It's not about lying. What would you call it?" "Buying time. For you and Kendra. For everyone." "No. Valerie. No. Can you at least think about it?" "I am thinking about it." I pointed at the door. "Get out of the bedroom." He slept downstairs. I barely slept at all. Kendra called before 7 the next morning. I watched her name appear on my screen. For years, I had answered her calls without thinking. That morning, I couldn't. She called again. Then she started texting. She apologized. She said there was no excuse. She said it had gotten out of control. She said they had tried to stop several times. Then she wrote, "Please don't tell Ross yet. Please don't punish my baby for what we did." That was the first thing she said that actually got through to me. Not because I suddenly felt sorry for her. Because there really was an innocent child involved. I spent most of that day wondering what the least damaging decision was. Tell Ross immediately? Give Kendra time to confess? Wait for the test? Every option seemed cruel to someone. Curtis found me in the kitchen later that morning. I ended it. With Kendra. Yes. When? He didn't answer fast enough. After she found out she was pregnant? Yes. So you stopped when consequences showed up. That's not fair. I looked at him. You've been doing this for 9 months. I'm not interested in what feels fair to you. He rubbed his forehead. I know I messed up. I asked if he loved her. No. Does she love you? I don't think so. So what was it? He looked exhausted. I don't know. That answer bothered me more than I expected. If he had told me they were desperately in love, at least there would have been some kind of reason. A selfish reason. A terrible reason. But something. Instead, 2 people I trusted had risked 2 marriages for something neither of them could explain. 2 days later, Ross texted me. Kendra said you know about the pregnancy. Thanks for being there for her. She's nervous about telling everyone, so I'm trying not to push. I read it 3 times. Ross was thanking me for supporting his pregnant wife while my husband might have been the father. Curtis came into the room and saw my face. What happened? I handed him my phone. He read the message. Don't answer yet. That decided it. Not because I suddenly had perfect moral clarity, but because I saw where silence would lead. First, I wouldn't answer. Then I'd answer carefully. Then Ross would tell family. Then there would be congratulations and plans and photos. And every time he looked at me, I would know I had information about his marriage that he didn't. I took my phone back. I'm telling him. Curtis's face changed. Valerie, please. Give us a few days. There's that word again. What? Us. He went quiet. My phone rang. Kendra. This time I answered. She started crying immediately. Please don't tell him. I said nothing. I know you hate me. I don't even know what I feel about you. Then just wait. How long? Until we get the test. And if the baby is Ross's? Silence. Kendra. Her voice got quieter. If the baby is Ross's, maybe there's no reason to put him through this. There it was. The real plan. Not temporary secrecy. Permanent secrecy if the result gave them an exit. You were never going to tell him. I don't know. Yes, you do. I'm trying to save my marriage. You had an affair with my husband. I know. For 9 months. I know. And now saving your marriage means asking me to help deceive yours? She started crying harder. I'm scared. I believe you. Then please. I closed my eyes. She said, don't make a permanent decision while you're angry. I almost laughed. You had 9 months to make calm decisions. That's not fair. You keep saying that like fairness is still available. She went silent. I said, tell Ross today. What? You tell him. Today. Valerie. If you don't, I will. You can't give me an ultimatum like that. I just did. I ended the call. For the next several hours, I kept checking my phone. Nothing. By evening, I knew she hadn't told him. So I asked Ross to meet me. I chose a coffee shop because I couldn't imagine doing it at his house. Ross walked in smiling. That almost made me lose my nerve. He sat across from me. Is Kendra okay? That was the first thing he asked. I looked at him and realized he was worried about her. Even then, I said, Ross, I need to tell you something. Please let me finish before you call anyone. His smile disappeared. I told him about the affair. I told him Curtis said it had been going on for around 9 months. Then I told him there was uncertainty about the pregnancy. Ross didn't interrupt. When I finished, he stared at his untouched drink. Then he asked, how long have you known? 3 days. He looked at me. Only 3? Yes. Did you know anything before that? No. The question confused me. I swear. Ross nodded slowly. Okay. I apologized. He shook his head. Don't apologize for telling me. Then he stood and left. Kendra called less than half an hour later. The crying was gone. She was furious. You told him. Yes. I said I was going to. You had all day. I needed time. You had 9 months. You had no right to take that conversation away from me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He's my husband, she said. And Curtis is mine. Silence. Then she said, I thought you loved me. That was the moment something in me finally shut. Apparently loving her meant helping her avoid consequences. I said I did. Then I hung up. Curtis was angry too. He tried to frame it as concern. He said I had escalated everything before the paternity result was known. I stared at him. So the test decides whether what you did matters? That's not what I'm saying. I shook my head. I want you to pack a bag. His face went pale. You're kicking me out? I'm asking you to leave. Because you're angry? No. Because you had an affair with my best friend for 9 months. He didn't answer. I said, it's interesting how quickly the problem became my reaction. He left that night. For almost a week, Ross said nothing to me. Then he sent a message. Can we meet again? There's something you should know. When I saw him this time, he looked controlled. Not okay. Just controlled. He sat down and said, I already suspected Kendra. I stared at him. What? Not necessarily with Curtis. But I knew something was wrong. How long? Months. That explained why he had asked whether I knew. Ross said Kendra had become protective of her phone. She had started giving vague explanations about where she was. A few times, she had claimed she was with me when she wasn't. That made my stomach turn. She used me as an excuse? He nodded. I had no idea. I believe you now. He apologized for wondering whether I had been helping her. I told him I understood. Then Ross said something I wasn't expecting. I spoke to a lawyer before you told me. You already had proof? Not proof. Enough to know I needed advice. He didn't tell me everything he had found. Only that there were inconsistencies, records he couldn't explain, and one message involving Curtis that had made him stop dismissing his instincts. He had started documenting things quietly because he wanted to be certain before accusing his wife of anything. Then Kendra announced she was pregnant. I wanted that baby, he said. You still might be the father. I know. He looked down. That's why I didn't confront her immediately. For the first time, I understood how long Ross had been trapped in uncertainty before I ever entered it. Then he said, I asked Kendra to have dinner with me Friday. I waited. I told her Curtis should come. My stomach tightened. He looked at me. And I want you there too. My first instinct was no. Absolutely not. Sitting at a table with the four of us sounded unbearable. Ross must have seen it on my face. They've spent months having conversations about our lives without us there. I didn't answer. I want one conversation where everyone is in the room. That was why I agreed. Friday night, I arrived first. Ross had chosen a quiet restaurant with booths far enough apart that we could talk privately. There was a thick folder beside him. I noticed it immediately. What's that? You'll see. Kendra arrived next. She saw me and stopped. Then she looked at Ross. You said this was dinner. It is. Her eyes went to the empty chair. Curtis walked in a few minutes later. He saw me. Then Kendra. Then Ross. He sat. Nobody touched the menus. For several seconds, all four of us just sat there. That was the strangest part. We had eaten together dozens of times. Birthdays. Weekends. Celebrations. Ordinary nights when nobody wanted to cook. I knew what Kendra usually ordered. Ross knew Curtis liked extra ice in his drink. We had once been that comfortable. Now nobody knew where to look. Kendra spoke first. Ross, why are we doing this? Ross placed both hands on the folder. Because apparently everyone except me has been discussing my marriage. Kendra looked down. Curtis said, I'm sorry. Ross looked at him. No. You're uncomfortable. Curtis stopped talking. Ross opened the folder. The first pages he placed on the table were phone records. Rows of calls. Dates. Times. Kendra's face changed. Then came printed statements from their shared accounts. Restaurant charges. Parking charges. Places Kendra had never mentioned being. Nothing dramatic by itself. Together, it formed a pattern. Then Ross placed a screenshot on the table. A message preview from Curtis. Does Valerie suspect anything? Curtis went pale. I stared at it. Even after everything I knew, seeing my own name inside one of their secret conversations made my stomach turn. Kendra looked at Ross. You went through my stuff? Ross shook his head. The account is ours. The tablet is ours. The statements are ours. She didn't answer. Then he pulled out a handwritten timeline. I looked at the first date. Nearly 5 months earlier. You've been keeping this that long? I asked. Ross nodded. Curtis finally spoke. If you knew, why didn't you confront us? Ross looked at him. Because I wanted to be sure I wasn't destroying my marriage over suspicion. That shut Curtis up. Ross turned to Kendra. You told me you were with Valerie 6 times when you weren't. Her eyes filled. I know. No. You know that I know. She looked at me. I said nothing. Ross tapped the timeline. I spent months wondering whether Valerie was helping you. Kendra whispered, she wasn't. I know. Ross glanced at me. She told me 3 days after she learned the truth. Then he looked back at his wife. You had months. Kendra started crying. I was scared. Ross nodded. So was I. Nobody spoke. Curtis tried again. Ross, whatever you think of me, I don't spend much time thinking about you. Curtis went quiet. Ross returned his attention to Kendra. You keep asking me to wait for the paternity result before I decide anything. Yes. Why? Because it matters. To the baby, yes. She looked confused. Ross reached into the folder again. This time he removed another set of papers. He placed them in front of her. What is this? Draft separation terms. Her face strained. They weren't filed divorce papers. They were documents his lawyer had prepared explaining how a separation could work if he chose to move forward. Financial arrangements. Living arrangements. What would happen depending on paternity? Kendra shook her head. Ross, please. You're doing this before we even know, she asked. Ross leaned back. That's the part you still don't understand. She stared at him. I don't need a paternity test to know you lied to me. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. If the baby is mine, I'll be that child's father. His voice cracked slightly. If the baby isn't mine, we'll deal with that when we know. Kendra covered her mouth. But neither result changes what you did. I was trying to save us. Ross shook his head. No. You were waiting to see whether you had to tell me. Kendra cried harder. You don't understand. I understand exactly. He tapped the papers. If the baby was mine, you planned to keep me married to you without ever knowing there had been a question. She said nothing. And if the baby was Curtis's, then you would tell me because you had no choice. Kendra whispered, I didn't know what I was going to do. Ross looked at her for a long second. That's not better. Then he turned toward Curtis. You asked your wife to help deceive me. Curtis looked up. I panicked. Ross nodded toward me. So did she. Then he said, she told me anyway. Curtis looked at me. I couldn't tell whether his expression was shame or anger. I didn't care anymore. Ross closed the folder. That was the end of dinner. Nobody ordered. Kendra left first. Curtis walked out a few minutes later, alone. I stayed with Ross for a little while. Neither of us spoke at first. Then I asked, did that help? He gave a tired laugh. No. I understood. It hadn't helped me either. But it ended the waiting. The idea that nobody could make a decision until a test told us whose baby it was. Because the pregnancy wasn't what had destroyed everything. The lying had started long before that. The paternity result came back a couple of weeks later. The baby was Ross's. Curtis told me the result like he expected it to change something between us. At least there isn't going to be a child connecting Kendra and me forever. I stared at him. You still don't understand. What? The baby was never the worst part. His expression fell. The possibility mattered. But when everything finally caught up with you, your first instinct was to ask me to help hide it. I panicked. Panic explains 5 minutes. Not a plan. He didn't answer. Curtis asked me to try marriage counseling. I refused at first. Eventually, I agreed. Not because I had decided to forgive him. 8 years was a long marriage, and I wanted to know whether there was anything left inside me that wanted to save it. We went twice. During the second session, the counselor asked what I would need from Curtis to consider rebuilding trust. I sat there for a long time. Then I realized I didn't want passwords, promises, explanations, or access to his phone. I didn't want to become someone who spent every late evening wondering whether traffic was really traffic. That was when I knew. After the session, I told Curtis I wanted a divorce. He cried. That hurt more than I expected. I had loved him for years. Part of me still loved the person I thought he was. But I couldn't build a marriage with that version of him anymore. Ross and Kendra tried counseling longer. The pregnancy complicated everything. Ross wanted to be present. He went to appointments. He helped prepare for the baby. For a while, they even tried living together again. But one question kept bothering him. If the baby had been his and I had stayed quiet, would Kendra ever have told him? She never gave him an answer he believed. They separated again. A few months later, Ross filed for divorce. The baby was born healthy. Ross is an involved father. Curtis and Kendra never became a couple. As far as I know, whatever existed between them ended almost immediately after everything came out. At first, that almost made it worse. 2 marriages ended. A friendship that had lasted years ended. And the 2 people who caused it didn't even want each other once secrecy disappeared. My divorce from Curtis was finalized earlier this year. Kendra and I haven't spoken face-to-face since that dinner. She sent me one message after the baby was born. She apologized again. She said becoming a mother had made her understand the damage differently. She said she hoped someday I could remember the good years of our friendship instead of only how it ended. I read it. Then I deleted it. I didn't hate her anymore. I just didn't want her back. Ross and I aren't close either. We checked in a few times during the divorces. There was never anything romantic between us. We were simply 2 people who discovered that the people closest to us had built a private world behind our backs. The last time we spoke, Ross thanked me again for telling him. I told him he didn't have to. Sometimes I still think about those 3 days when I knew and he didn't. I know anger played a part in what I did. I wasn't perfectly calm or selfless. But if I had agreed to wait, even temporarily, I would have become part of their secret. And the strange thing is, the baby really was Ross's. So there is a version of this story where I stay quiet, the test comes back, and Kendra never confesses. Ross might still be married. Maybe I would be too. From the outside, all 4 of us might still look normal. But Ross already knew something was wrong. He had spent months questioning his own instincts while Curtis and Kendra convinced themselves silence was protecting him. It wasn't. They were protecting themselves. I couldn't undo the affair or control whether either marriage survived. I could only decide whether I was going to become another person Ross trusted who looked him in the face and lied. So I told him. Even knowing everything that happened afterward, I still think I would make the same choice. But was I wrong for telling my best friend's husband before she was ready, especially when the baby ultimately turned out to be his? Or did he deserve the truth the moment I learned it, no matter what it destroyed?